Why, hello, everybody. I'm Shaun, and this is another movie review. Today, we're going to be talking about 2001's Donald Darko. The film is written and directed by Richard Kelley. It stars Jake Gyllenhaal, Holmes Osborne, Maggie Gyllenhaal, DeVay Chase, Mary McDonnell, James Duvall, Patrick Swayze, and others. The logline plot synopsis is: after narrowly escaping a bizarre accident, a troubled teenager is plagued by visions of a man in a large rabbit suit who manipulates him to commit a series of crimes. So yeah, you've all seen Donnie Darko. Who the fuck hasn't seen Donnie Darko? Well, honestly, I feel like I have barely seen Donnie Darko. I couldn't remember a goddamn thing about this movie. The last time I watched it was probably back in like 2003. It would have been like in its peak, its heyday. It would have been dropping that Donnie Darko director's cut a couple years later because the kids, they love Donnie Darko. I remember I had some film friends. I had a couple film friends. Everybody talking about Donnie Darko. Everybody talking about Boondock Saints. Everybody talking about fucking Super Troopers. A hellscape of conversation. Requiem for a Dream. Oh my god, how fucking intense and deep was that movie when you were 17? Well, I would say Donnie Darko kind of has a similar thing going for it. Although, it seems the legend of Darko. You know, some of those other movies like Requiem for a Dream, Super Troopers, they've kind of fallen off the cliff culturally. Like, nobody gives a fuck about those movies. Nobody talks about those movies anymore. They're not relevant unless you're some sort of Gen X fucking infantilized holdover that just can't get over the things he saw when he was 25 and in college and was like, wow, this is hip and it's happening. Donnie Darko has persisted a little bit better, a little bit harder. It's still there. People, whenever it's brought up, like, oh yeah, I love Donnie Darko. It's so weird, so cool. But like I said, I had not seen it since, I don't know, 2003 probably. Would have been like 16 or 17 the last time I watched this movie. And I impulsively, because I have a sickness, I impulsively purchased the 4K because I was just like, my son and I were bored. We were at the store and I just happened to see it. It was sitting there on a shelf. I went to Amazon to price match it in the store I was at because I knew it was selling a little bit cheaper on Amazon, only to find out that it was no longer available like anywhere. It was completely sold out. So I look at it as an investment. Like, so I spent $30. 6 months from now, I could get a cool $100 for it. That box set, that collector's box set, and all the little doodads and stuff. So I said, fuck it. So I ended up watching it this morning. Actually paid attention and very intently watching the movie. Not because I was concerned about being confused or anything like that. It's just I was just zoned in. I was just into it this morning. And coming back to it after all this time, does Donnie Darko hold up? Is it a good movie? I would say it's an okay movie. It's very much a first-time director movie, and it feels like that. And you can kind of feel that throughout the film. There's kind of a roughness to it. There's an earnestness to it that you don't find, which that's been beaten out of you the older you get. It has kind of a sense of pretension about it a little bit. It's a little pseudo-intellectual. It's not actually as deep or as clever or as insightful as it thinks it is. And honestly, that's okay. I think that's okay, especially if you were to think about how old Richard Kelley was when he made this. He was like 25 years old when he made this movie. And not everybody's fucking Orson Welles. Not everybody's like banging out Citizen Kane their first go. And it has all the hallmarks of kind of a young, pretentious, overeducated asshole. But he was into cool things. He's into... I know a little bit about Richard Kelley's history because his family is involved in like NASA. Like, his parents are scientists and stuff like that. So when he's talking about like quantum theory and wormholes and time travel, those come out of an interest because of what his parents did. They were like physicists, and like I said, they worked for NASA. So he comes to that stuff honestly, you know? And it's cool to see it explored. He just had to add this kind of extra layer of like kind of depth and meaning, and tries to be philosophical with it. And it's like kind of dealing with the concepts of fatalism and destiny. And what do those concepts mean in a world where there are multiple versions of a reality kind of happening at the same time? And do they kind of intersect with one another, even in a more esoteric, almost more spiritual way, right? And I think a lot of that stuff is interesting, and it's very obtuse, and it's kind of vague, and it doesn't ever explain itself, and it's more of like a tone poem. It's kind of like a little bit Lynchian. I know people get crazy when people compare things to David Lynch, but the tone is very clearly similar to something David Lynch would produce. This is way more straightforward than a David Lynch movie, but it's very much in the vein of that. An obvious influence on Richard Kelley, you know? And he was definitely, you could see, influenced by a lot of 90s cinema, especially even some of the people that are in this movie that were in some movies that he clearly watched when he was in college. Like James Duval as Frank the Rabbit. That guy was in this movie called Doom Generation. I'm trying to remember the director's name of Doom Generation. But they were very, influential. Go, that was another 90s movie. SLC Punk. Where is it? There it is. And he was also in Independence Day, by the way. Yeah, he's like Randy Quaid's kid. Yeah, the Doom Generation director, Greg Araki, the LGBTQ plus whatever director. He was very influential on a generation of people. And that's definitely in this movie. Especially when you start talking about like kind of music cues and et cetera, et cetera. And it also touches on a lot of interesting things too, because it is a period movie. It takes place in like 1988. He's definitely kind of trying to find reconciliation, I think, with kind of some of the stuff that was going on culturally, especially when it came to like pharmaceuticals and kids. You know, kids with problems. Like in the late 80s, that's when like psych culture was like, pop psych became a thing, and everybody's reading self-help books, and everybody's kind of looking for their deeper meaning in life, trying to rediscover themselves sometimes when they're older, and this leads to kind of this ignoring of the immediate needs and nature of being a teenager from adults. And kids kind of getting lost in the shuffle there, and parents not really knowing what to do because there's this incoming world of self-help and pharmacology and Ritalin and all this stuff that they want to push on your kids, and they don't really know what to do, and they're helpless, and they're too fucked up to ask these questions themselves. And it has that stuff in there. It does not really do too much with it. It's just there, and it's nice that it's there. It adds an extra layer. It adds kind of a verisimilitude to the world and a little bit of... You can understand why somebody like Donnie exists in terms of his kind of nature and because he's like a troubled kid. He has kind of I guess, almost it seems like they're kind of implying he has some kind of bipolar or schizophrenic type deal, which, you know, if the movie is literal, ends up being a boon to him because he can see these spears, that everybody's connected in this cosmic sense through time and space. And I wish the movie was just not more explicit, but less precious about some of that stuff. And like I said, I think it's a first-time filmmaker thing. Like, this is very important. What we're doing is very important. But there's a lot of fun stuff in the movie. This is Jake Gyllenhaal, one of his first movies, if not his first movie. And he's good in it. Like, he serves the material well. Definitely seems like a first-time actor. One of my favorite guys, though, is Holmes Osborne, and he plays the dad. And I don't know why. That guy's always just kind of made me laugh. I like it when he shows up in movies. He's got kind of this kind of warm quality to him, but he's also seems like a little sleazy. And I don't know. I like that energy. I like his vibe. He makes me laugh. He makes me laugh in this movie a bunch of times. What else? Mary McDonald, obviously. I'm a big Battlestar Galactica, Battleship something or other. Battlestar Galactica. I like Battlestar Galactica, and she plays President Roslin in that show. I always get a little kick when she shows up in something. And then, of course, Patrick Swayze. He's kind of got an extended cameo as this Jim Cunningham guy who's a self-help guru, like so many others in the world. Which is kind of another one of these things where it kind of underlines where like a certain age demographic is in their lives. Because you see like kind of the older middle-aged people kind of being more interested in him, lonely housewives, people that just feel disaffected, than the younger generation that are like hip and cool, and they want to bring the new knowledge, the cool stuff they've learned in college. They want to teach that to their students. Because there's a scene where there's like a PTA meeting, and one of the teachers, and parents is like they're complaining about a book that some of the Drew Barrymore's characters like reading to the students. They feel it's like too sexually explicit and whatnot, and they're trying to like, it's Kelley kind of trying to show you that there's this kind of struggle between generations and mindsets and blah blah blah, trying to imply that there's something like darker and more mysterious going on in these kind of sleepy suburbs, a la David Lynch, like a Blue Velvet type thing, almost. Not nearly as good or as interesting, but he's trying. He was trying. But yeah, and I don't know. I definitely enjoyed it. Like I wouldn't put it up there as like a favorite or anything. I wasn't really underwhelmed by it because a lot of these times when you have movies like this that attain this kind of cult status, I guess, they are of the time they were made, and it means something to like a very specific generation of people. It means something to a lot of people my age. Donnie Darko. Although I have a feeling that most people probably just saw it when they were teenagers or in their late teens or early 20s, and they just remember thinking it was awesome because it's just kind of nebulous and it's just kind of out there. And it's fun, and it's supposed to make you think, and oh, cool, isn't it cool to get wrapped up in fan theories and all this stuff. That set I bought actually comes with the director's cut, which I've never seen before. I might check it out later today. I don't know if I want to watch Donnie Darko again just to watch 20 extra minutes, but from what I understand, the movie kind of misses its own point, or it shows that Richard Kelley didn't really understand what worked about his movie, because the extra stuff kind of just over-explains what's going on, and there's like a time travel book. There's way more stuff with the parents, yada yada yada, and people are just like, oh, you kind of like fucked up the kind of the fun ambiguity about what you were doing, like leaving this up for discussion. The way the movie exists theatrically, like there's a lot of things you can talk about. Now, when you give a definite answer for some of this stuff, it's harder to talk about, which is something that he's kind of struggled with in his career, Southland Tales, The Box, he's way more explicit about what is going on in those movies, and that sometimes I think actually works against kind of trying to create like a theme, like a tone or something like that. Like something you're supposed to kind of intuit it. You're supposed to feel your way through it. And I think sometimes he's a little like too specific, and it just kind of can collapse under its own weight sometimes. And I say that as kind of a fan. Like I actually like Southland Tales. I didn't get a chance to do a video about it, but I bought they re-released it recently, and I bought it. Like I wanted to, I wanted to watch it again. It had been a long time, and I think overall I actually kind of enjoy that movie, even though I think it's very flawed. It's got a lot of problems. I've always liked The Box. It's based on a Richard Matheson story that I've always really liked. It's like this idea that this mysterious man shows up to your house, and he's got this box with a button inside of it, and if you press the button you get $1 million, but some random person in the world dies. You don't know who it is. You may not know who it is. You could know who it is. It could be your neighbor. It could be somebody a million miles away, and you don't know, but you could press the button and take the chance. And it's like about the kind of the fallout and the consequences of that. And then he does the same thing with that, where he over explains. It gets way too involved. It kind of almost ruins the morality play of it. But I actually I would watch a Richard Kelley movie. Like if Richard Kelley announced a new movie tomorrow and it came out in 6 months, I'd probably go watch it. I'd probably go see it in the theater. I think he's at least interesting enough of a presence and a guy and a filmmaker to warrant that, in my opinion. There's a lot of like the DNA of something great is there. Like the pieces are there. He doesn't always bring it together. Donnie Darko, while maybe it's a happy accident, like the reasons why it works as well as it does, because his director's cut is basically what they played at Sundance, and then they come back and then they edit like half hour out of the movie, and it just played better. Just played better because it tightens everything up, and it also made it more mysterious. And people responded to that, and the response, the way that Frank the Rabbit looks, and the kind of the iconography, and Jake Gyllenhaal and the skull T-shirt and stuff, like it's just very like kind of pop culture significant. That's not the right way to say it, but you know what I mean. Like it meant something to pop culture at the time. Because people can be very shallow and they kind of just glom onto that stuff on top of trying to figure out the mysteries of time travel and whatnot. And it makes you feel cool as a kid. Early days of the internet as well gave you a reason to go on message boards and talk to people and et cetera, et cetera. Like, it probably was very exciting to have a movie like Donnie Darko out there, to be able to even do that kind of stuff with. So maybe that's why it's persisted so long. That's why it's kind of maintained its status or its fan base or whatever you want to call it. But anyways, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to know more about Zoobox, there's a bunch of links in the description for Facebook, for Instagram, for my Twitter, for Dan's Twitter. Also, leave a comment. Let me know. Do you like Donnie Darko? Was it something that affected you in your lifetime? Do you love that fucking movie? Do you love that fucking movie like everybody else? Goodbye.